Thank you. Okay, we're going to start back at resolution 2021-08. Authorization application for acceptance of financial assistance for kayak launch at Robert M. Carmody Park. Mr. Ostead.
Well, at Carmody Park, we're building a facility for launch kayak. And we have some money for it, and we're going to try to get some more money for it. And the money that we have will be applied for a 50-50 grant from the DNR.
Okay. A motion a second. Any other questions, comments? We will go to the voter board. Permission by.
And we don't bother to close it out.
Yeah. We have to wait for Bob to return. That is passed on a vote of 20 yes, 1 absent. Thank you. Resolution 2021-09, County Snowmobile Trail Aid for the 2021-22 snow season. Mr. Ostead.
Okay, this is an annual thing that we apply to the state to get the money from the snowmobile registrations and et cetera to help out on our snowmobile trails.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments? We go to the voter board. -10, transfer of non-budgeted funds for parking lot and sidewalk repairs at Chitter's Dock Park. Dave Engelbert.
There it is, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. The resolution asks for up to $27,000 to be transferred from the Boach Launch Reserve account to do the parking lot repair work that's needed there. It's one of the very highly used parks for launching in Door County, and the work definitely needs to be done.
Okay. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, I was wondering, is there a reason, is this just wear and tear, or is there any chance it's high water or any issues, that might be like emergency type thing or what?
As it was information given to us at finance, I suppose it's something they could have looked at earlier perhaps, but it is needed. It's not due to high water. It's just the years of the park the work not being done at it. It's age deteriorating some of the conditions. And because it's coming from that account, which doesn't require budgeting, it's an account built with the fees that are paid by the people launching. Not to say it could go through the budget, but there is money available and nothing extra was budgeted for it.
Anybody else? We will go to the voter board. Well, I'll remind 2 things to remind. Since this is non-budget, it does take a 2/3 vote of the board to approve this. The second thing is, we talked about this last month, but we have new technology, so we forgot. That is, would you please let the chairman that I call on make the original motion and then do the second after that? Okay. Resolution 2021-11, International Migratory Bird Day. Mr. Ostack.
Okay, this is, I'll just read one of the, therefore, that, I was just gonna read it here. Is not only a day to foster appreciation for wild birds, to celebrate and support the migratory bird conservation, but then also the call to action. This is the second Saturday in May. It's good to join us. One of the reasons it's good to join us, that when we apply for grants and that from the DNR and that, it gives us a step up on other places that don't do these kind of things.
Okay. Any questions or comments? We will do this by voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Sorry. 2021-12 Wisconsin DOT Equipment Lease Agreement Brine Making System. Roy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an agreement that the state of Wisconsin is offering by brine making equipment for servicing our towers and roads. Currently, the county of Door has to run to Brown County to pick up the brine solution. This will alleviate the county from having to do that, and the contract is on following this resolution, and it's, well, I believe $1, and it's a 10-year lease.
Can you clarify what you just said, Roy? So all of the brine that we spread throughout Door County, we have to go to Green Bay and pick up?
That's correct. We don't have brine making equipment here. So when you see those little white streams on our highways, that's
Yeah.
running to Brown County to pick up, yes. But this will save the state and the county quite a bit of money. And it's at no charge.
Even better. Okay, thank you. Okay, since it involves the lease, any questions? Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I wanted to clarify, this doesn't cost us any money, but it's a 10-year like lease agreement. So are we like, I mean, are we bound into this? I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, I applaud the state and the county for efforts in reducing salt use. Salt contaminating our waterways is a serious problem, and it gets worse and worse every year. So this brine allows a more direct application. In the big picture, it minimizes salt, going off into the waterways. It is a pretty new technology, and the brine is still sort of this undergoing updates and upgrades. And so I was wondering if this equipment, if we have this same equipment for 10 years, is it able to use different types of brine mixtures? Some brines are derived from petroleum products, so they contain heavy metals and other contaminants, which may not be a good trade-off for the excess salt. Some brine formulations are more corrosive to vehicles than anything else we've put on roads before. So this is still a kind of an ongoing new thing. So I just didn't want to be stuck with equipment for 10 years. I'm assuming, is that part of it, maybe the state would upgrade it if there was an upgrade to different formulations. I was just curious if we know anything about that.
This, from our understanding, the way that, again, I'm not anywhere near an expert on it, but when we had talked about it at Highway, this explanation of it, the equipment does allow for, I guess, variations of the product mixtures and how it's done. So the ideal answer would be that hopefully that as technology or knowledge increases, that you'll be able to actually adjust the system itself. In other words, the systems, the way it can mix the brine system, what's applied, I guess, is a little bit variable in terms of the future technology. Now, if it changes dramatically, does that prohibit us? It doesn't in that sense, but it does limit us in terms of that we're using this equipment or a part of the lease or the agreement that you have before you is for the 10 years, though.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess I'd just be looking for that flexibility to possibly use different, or like you said, improving formulations over time.
Correct.
Thank you very much. I understand none of us in the room is an expert on brine. Thanks.
Anybody else? Right, we will go to the voter board. It's for the PIN 28162-100000117 to the city. Ken, you wanna- Yeah, we're good.
So yes, in part of your packet, you'll see the, I guess, the agreement along with the resolution is on page 68. Then the agreement's attached on page 69. And then on page 72, you'll actually see the map. Again, what you'll see in the map is the parcel highlighted in yellow. That item, that parcel in yellow was taken through the IMRAM process for the county. Where you see the number 1227, it's the former Bank Mutual property. That property is under the control of the city of Sturgeon Bay. So what we did is we were trying to work with them to, in essence, market those two properties together to get a, I guess, a larger project located in that area. So going through that process, we're looking at any agreement of turning over the property to the city of Sturgeon Bay. They would make us whole in terms of what we are required or what we have into it at this point in time, which you'll see as in the agreement itself. Likewise, there's also an agreement that should they, I guess, exceed in terms of revenue or proceeds from their sale, once we're both made whole, that we would I guess, share in those proceeds at a 50-50 division.
Dave, Anago?
In many cases, municipalities will sell property without actually having a dollar value. How is that affected as far as our return on investment?
Again, in this case, we're looking at trying to get the property, I guess what the common term is the highest and best use. So hopefully we can make that happen by working together and marketing those two properties together. However, if they get a developer in and they are able to leverage a project that they, whatever through their process, maybe they sell it for $1 or something like that. I guess our goal is still hopefully to have a property that's on the highest and best use in terms of the future tax return. But again, for right now, we're turning over that property and we're making ourselves whole in terms of our expenses.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Dave Engelbert?
Yeah, as we reviewed it at finance, looking at, if you look at that map on page 72, as Ken mentioned, there's a very limited access to the Egg Harbor Road. And so by combining it with the city, one would anticipate that it's much more favorable to marketing and increases the use potential for that property.
Thank you. Anyone else? We will go to the voter board. Passing the vote of 19 yes, 1 abstain, and 1 absent. Thank you. Resolution 2021-15, amend the table of organization for the Door County Land Use Services Department and Treasurer's Department.
This one, actually have a motion. Okay, so this one, we have discussed it, just in terms of updates. And again, we actually had multiple discussions at finance and also through land use services. Again, right now, this is procedurally though, I guess is the follow-up to all those discussions and presentations. Normally, when we make any types of organizational changes, we at least try to document that through a resolution along with a chart, especially if a position is actually removed from the organizational chart. So on page 89, you have the resolution that describes the change. Likewise, then on page 90, you actually see, I guess, the changed organizational chart. The main thing to point out on that chart again is under the land information, I guess, area, you'd see in the original organizational chart, the GIS technician listed as a function. Then if you go to the proposed, you'll see that position is no longer there. Does not mean the duties went away. We actually divided those up to where part of the duties are now with the chief deputy in terms of the tax listing, and then the addressing, which is the other major portion of that position, is with the GIS LIO coordinator. Likewise, is this in terms of references, we also included the updates as far as the job descriptions. Again, proposed to be eliminated the GIS technician, but the deputy or the chief deputy for the treasurer's office, and then also the GIS land information coordinator.
Questions? Dave, Anigo?
Clearly, my mind is failing me. I thought normally when we did a department overhaul, a change in policies and that stuff within the department, that the oversight committee typically views this as well. Am I wrong?
It did go to, I summarized it now, but it did go to land use services probably back in November. So it did not go back to land use services once we made that presentation. And then it went through finance probably twice just because of the update related to that. And that's why it's here before you today.
I guess I don't remember the combining of positions during any of that discussion. So maybe I just don't remember it.
It was, I mean, I know it was presented.
Because you're effectively removing a position. So then the next question is, there's somebody occupying that position at this time.
No, right now that individual, since the treasurer obviously retired and we have a new elected treasurer making the, I guess, the chief deputy. So the position that's currently held by Chris Moe was moved downstairs as the chief deputy and then also taking on the tax listing duties. So we're not, I guess, having to lay off or eliminate any positions that someone's in right now.
Okay, so the clerk has made that appointment? I mean, the treasurer has made that appointment?
The treasurer knows that they have to swear that individual in, but they did talk about that at finance, and the treasurer did state that they will be swearing that individual in.
That particular one, he chose that
Correct.
individual.
Correct.
Just surprisingly out of the loop then, apparently.
Okay, anyone else? Dave Engelbert?
Yeah, as Ken just mentioned, specifically at finance, did ask the newly elected treasurer about this appointment of this individual as deputy treasurer, and that was agreeable, and we're expecting it to be done after this meeting today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, I did pay attention. I know you said we should all wait until the chairman makes the motion, but I also know that through past history, you like the motions to come from the floor. That is why I made it, and sorry if I overstepped you on that one.
No problem. Anybody else? That we will go to the voter board. We'll recreate chapter 4.01 Door County Code. Yeah. Susan? Thank you. Yeah.
So for this one, I can give a brief explanation. If not, we have both Kelly and Grant that can back me up. But in essence, we're looking at repealing the Civil Service Commission. Again, this is not seen as a negative tactic or anything. In essence, it was done as part of the study that we had on the Sheriff's Department last year in terms of a recommendation. Again, depending on where you look at within the counties or even within the state, this in terms of the commissions, it's not that they're out of date, it's just that we have a lot of that what the commission was used for in the past actually built into our HR functions currently. And again, so as part of the recommendation that was done through the study, one of the things I identified both as an efficiency was to actually dissolve or again, repeal that through our ordinance, the Civil Service Commission, but then also, I guess, document more clearly our HR procedures. So in the packet, you have your resolution that outlines that in terms of not the resolution, I'm sorry, the ordinance. showing how we're doing that, but then also we had supplementary information just in terms of just documenting what our procedures are within HR in terms of handling those, I guess, moving forward. So again, this item was, I guess, part of the study that was done by, at that time, the report for the sheriff's department. We had discussions both at the sheriff and also at the admin committee, and that's why it's before you now today.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this was an interesting one for me and learning about how the civil service, how that works. And this is a situation where by going this route, we're going to give our sheriff not only the flexibility, but the expediency to hire good candidates. That's one of the things that the old process, as Ken explained, many of these, it's basically things that used to be the way they were are now in-house. We have an HR department, we have an administrator. Things are, this will be more efficient for the sheriff to not miss out on good candidates. So I think this is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Biz?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can testify that this has been around for a long, long time. I was hired by the Civil Service Commission back in 1968. So it was even prior to that it's been around. But the sheriff always had the final say. If they were hiring one person and they gave the sheriff 3 names, he or she could pick. So, but by changing it and now putting it under the human resource, I don't see where it's going to make a real lot of difference, because they'll interview all the candidates and give some names to the sheriff. The sheriff will have the final say in it, just like they did with the way it was for 50, 60 years in the past. So I'm in support of it. It's good.
David Engelbert?
Yeah, I guess I pushed to speak prior to Biz making his comments, but I guess I'd go along with what Biz was saying, that, I never had a problem with the Civil Service Commission. I think those people on that committee always did a good job and represented a broad sector of Door County in making their selection. They used information that came through the HR office, which has been around for a long time already. And, it did work. I don't think we should move away from it thinking it was a bad means of hiring people, but this change is just fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll go to the voter board. I will remind, because this is a change, it's going to take a 3/4 vote of the board. Thank you. Report, amendment to the zoning map of Sturgeon Bay, Jane Court. Dave Enigo? Any comments about it?
We do have the director here if she wants to chime in. It was a wide variety of unusual items that need to be corrected, but it works out.
Megan?
I do have a question regarding this. And one of the reasons that it really caught my eyes, because this is my neck of the woods. This is where I grew up. So my question is, it says that we're allowing fill to remain in 374-foot square pocket of wetland. So is that saying that fill was put in where it should not have been initially? Not necessarily, I'm not saying it was necessarily by Mr. Jeancourt, but by someone who owned that property, and now we're saying, oh, okay, well, it's already there. So we'll go ahead and rezone this. I just was wondering if I could get a little bit more background on that. Thanks so much.
Hello, Mariah Good, Door County Land Use Services Director. So this is, I'll try and make this short. So Mr. Junquart did put in the fill, but he had looked at the zoning map and talked to somebody in our office, and the very small area of actual wetland was shown on the zoning map as being upland. And then when he found out it was actual wetland, he went through the process to get his permits from the Department of Natural Resources and the Army Corps of Engineers and got his delineation done. And he thought everything was fine, so he went ahead and put in the fill. There's a weird disconnect between the wetland regulations that the county is required to administer by the DNR and the DNR permitting process for filling a wetland. And so we still needed to correct our maps in order to reflect what actually happened. But it's just very confusing because the map already shows it as being upland when in fact it was wetland. So at the same time that he was getting his DNR permits, he also had the existing driveway, which he did not put in. That's been in there for many years. He had that delineated, and that's why if you look on page 116, and you'll see what's the attachment to the ordinance, you can see that long skinny blue line. That's the driveway that's been filled for many, many, many years. And so he had that delineated and kind of the area around the part that was filled. So we don't normally put a before and an after map in, but this one was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So that's why attached to the report is how it's zoned right now. So you can't even see the dot in question because it already is mapped as upland. But when you get to the after, you can see that there's like still a little tiny island of wetland within that estate zoning.
I appreciate the clarification. Thanks. Things do change out there quite often, and it's a really interesting area of the county in those wetlands towards the lake there. So I was just really curious about how that all came about. Thanks.
Thanks, Megan. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This issue once again begs the need for accurate wetland maps. I'm hoping we're at a point where between Soil and Water and the Land Use Services Office, we are using the latest LiDAR information. This new kind of aerial radar can pinpoint things to within inches on the ground. And this is just another one of those cases where, oh, the fill was already there, we're just going to let it go. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And we are losing wetlands across this country. We've lost way too many, and we need to be doing the opposite. It's this body, our department, our DNR, we all need to do better about saving and preserving and restoring wetlands. We should be pulling fill out of wetlands and revegetating them to natural states so they can do the jobs that they need to do and provide the habitat they need to provide. I have nothing against Mr. Janquart, but I'm voting against this on principle because, again, it's a death by 1,000 cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so this is the report. So the report we can accept by voice vote. So we're going to voice vote this. By voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye, or opposed, nay, sorry.
Okay. Now we'll go to the ordinance pertaining to the report. Ordinance 2021-02, amendment to the zoning map of Sturgeon Bay.
Yeah, there you go. Turn the mic on, please. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-02.
Thank you. Any questions on this one?
If I may make another comment, many of the comments that Mr. Boltman said are quite valid. The difficulty when you sit on RPC for the number of years, or you can deal with zoning in general, is every year as newer technology comes out and the accuracy does get better. I've been around long enough now in general, not just on the county board, to have seen those maps. Holy cow, how in the world was that ever defined as wetland or not wetland? There is a development in this county that everybody in the neighborhood sat and wondered how in the world could that development be there, because we all saw it as wetlands because we knew what it looked like. And that is a striving point for the county, is to, I believe the department is doing a very good job at trying to make that clear when those questions come up. Thank you.
Vinnie?
Thank you. I just want to add to that I think it is really important, especially in this last year where we just had very high water tables and high water levels. I saw wetlands in places I had never seen them before. So I think that mapping is really crucial, and the delineations that are done by the DNR and any work that our planning department and soil and water department can do to support those delineations or to give more information, since they know the land much better than someone coming from far away in the state. I think the best we can do for that to protect the wetlands is great.
Thank you. Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know this exact area, and that is why I'm actually pretty comfortable going ahead and voting for this. However, I will mirror the statements of both Supervisor Boltman and Shampo. I feel that we most definitely could be doing, or I mean, I'm not saying we're not now. I don't want to say that, but I do want to make sure that we are doing the absolute best that we can to be preserving the wetlands that we have and be looking towards returning some wetland. I would like to put a focus on that for Door County. So I just wanted to make that statement. In this case, I do feel like this is residential property and that this makes sense.
Thank you. Anyone else? Since this is an ordinance now, we will go to the vote. Let's pass on a vote of 17 yes, 1 nay, and 3 absent. Thank you. We're going to go out of order for a moment. We're going to lose more people at 2 o'clock. We need to make sure that the Wilkie map amendment denial report is taken care of. Okay. So we're going to move down to that.
Okay. I'm going to start with this. This is a rather unique situation, but for reasons that probably don't need to be gotten into too much, the petitioner here has requested to be allowed to withdraw their petition. What I suggest is the cleanest way to handle this is for the county board to take a vote up or down, yes or no, on whether or not to allow the petitioner to withdraw their petition. The reason I suggest that is at this point in time, this matter belongs to the county board. The petitioner doesn't have the ability to unilaterally withdraw their petition. But in light of the circumstances, and maybe Mariah can get in that a little bit, I think it's reasonable for the county board to at least consider, and I'd even go so far as to say, to allow the petitioners to withdraw their petition in this case, because that would then allow the petitioner to apply immediately for, not apply, to petition for another zoning amendment with which, based on known facts and circumstances, is at least likely to succeed and would eliminate, if the county board accepted the Resource Planning Committee's recommendation, there is a prohibition within our ordinance where they would not be able to reapply for 6 months. So.
Let me make sure I got this clear. So what you're asking us to is accept their new motion.
Well, I'm actually asking you to, you could ignore their request or you could act on their request. And what I'm asking or suggesting is the county board take an up or down vote on whether or not to allow the petitioners to withdraw their petition. And acknowledging this is a unique circumstance. It hasn't happened in the 25 years I've been here. And we're not setting a precedent because typically we've not done this, and we're going to make a decision here on the unique facts and circumstances of this case. And if the county board were to ask, I would suggest that it would be reasonable to allow the petitioners to withdraw their petition here and to be able to immediately file another petition for zoning amendment, given the underlying facts and circumstances, which if the county board is interested, Mariah can go into. But
So if we don't do this, if we don't do that, then they would have the denial by the RPC, and they would have to wait 6 months before they did anything else.
correct, that would be the likely outcome. The county board, of course, could refuse to deny and then refer back with instructions to draft an amendatory ordinance consistent with their petition. But as Mariah will explain, that's not ultimately what they want in light of objections raised by the city of Sturgeon Bay that have since been resolved.
Okay, one moment, but 2 questions. Mr. Fisher.
Mr. Chairman, that being said, I'll make a motion, if I may, to allow the petitioner to withdraw their request.
I would
David?
have been the first on that, by the way, sir.
I didn't know if you were going to.
Okay, now, do you want to explain?
I don't know that there's anything much. I don't know that there's anything much to add beyond what Grant did. Basically, if you act now on the report that's in front of you, they might have to wait 6 months to turn in a new application.
Yeah, if I may, if you'd have been at the meeting, you would have understood why they were looking at going that direction. And honestly, after talking with Grant and Mariah, this was the right thing to do for now, for this particular case. I was concerned about a precedence and everything else, but this is a reasonable request by them and a reasonable way for us to handle it.
Okay. All right, we will go to the voter board. As passed by a vote of 17 yes, 1 abstention, and 3 absent. Thank you. Okay. Back up, report amendment to the zoning map of Liberty Grove for Rundle Johansson. David,
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to accept that report.
will you give us an explanation?
So it might be easiest if you looked at your map, even though it's an attachment to the ordinance, it's on page 119. So these are 2 parcels in downtown Ellison Bay, right next to the park that has the beach and the tennis courts and the Ellison Bay Women's Club building. Right now, those parcels on the highway side are zoned high-density residential, and then on the back side are zoned single-family 30,000, which is just a regular residential district. The applicants originally applied for rezoning both parcels entirely to single-family 30,000. They were having trouble finding financing apparently because of the dual zoning district. And then the town said, well, why don't you rezone them entirely to high density? And they liked that idea. So by the time they got to the Resource Planning Committee hearing, that was kind of what they decided that they would rather have, is all one zoning district, but high density instead of single family 30,000. So the Resource Planning Committee went along with that recommendation. And so the reason it's a modified recommendation is because the original petition was for them to be entirely single family 30,000. And now the recommendation is that they be entirely high density.
Any questions on the report? Yes. Alexis.
Thank you. I guess I have a question because it says on line 6 that the 2 parcels are currently zoned high density. And I'm confused about what the map says. It's single family to high density.
They wanted to take the original petition was to take the portions that are high density and rezone them to single family 30,000.
So what are we being asked?
So if you look at your map on page 119, the arrow that says single family 30,000 to high density residential. So that part right now is single family 30,000. And the original request was to rezone the front part of the lots also to single family 30,000. But instead, in the interim between the town meeting and the Resource Planning Committee meeting, everybody's agreed that they should become entirely high density rather than entirely single family 30,000. So that rectangle at the back is what they originally wanted to rezone from single family 30,000 to high density. I'm saying that backwards.
Yeah, say it back.
Sorry, not the rectangle, but the parts by the highway on the intersection of Bay Lane and State Highway 42, the front part of the lots were to go from high density to single family 30,000. Instead, they want to leave that high density and the back would become high density instead of single family 30,000. Maybe I should have done a
So is
before and an
this-
after on this one too.
So I just want to make sure that the report is correct and that.
It is
line
correct.
6, It says it's currently zoned high density
So
and
the,
they
re-
want to go to single family residential.
So the
but That's
report-
not what I'm hearing.
the report is a reflection of what was petitioned for.
Okay.
So the report is
Oh.
always what was brought to the resource planning committee,
Okay.
even if they make a recommendation that's 180 80
Other
degrees
way,
the other
got it.
direction.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Just want to make sure that's clear because I'm out. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so by voice vote to accept the report, all. Now the amendment to the map, 2021-03 amendment to the zoning map of Liberty Grove, Wendell, Johansson.
The amended map as presented.
Thank you. Any questions on the amendment? We'll go to the voter board. That is passed on a vote of 17 yes, 4 absent. Thank you. Last thing we have is under special reports, the educational component, racism is a public health crisis. This comes from the admin committee, originally taking a look at what we could do to continue our education in this particular area. We had a discussion about this. Grant was involved, Bob was involved, giving some input, as was Vinny. Bob from the committee standpoint. Grant, do you want to explain what you have put together?
Real quickly, and it's all spelled out on, starting on page 142 of the packet and runs pretty much through 145. Spare you what I did to reach these conclusions. Just suffice it to say that I explored options over about a month-long period and was comfortable offering for your consideration 2 options: external education and training through Mohammed Bey. He is the same individual who will be giving training to the Department of Health and Social Services, by the way. He is the Chief Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and also the Title IX Coordinator for NWTC. What he had proposed was 8 hours with the county board. What is anticipated would be 4 2-hour sessions. Those would ideally be in person. It would involve preparation, curriculum customization, and facilitation of the sessions. He would be able to start in March of 2021 with a complete project price of $4,235. There are other potential resources available that were similar in Northeast Wisconsin, but from a price point and I think from an experience point, Mr. Bay was the most appropriate in light of this. The other option would be, of course, to just do internal education and training. You got a glimpse of what's happening with the Department of Health and Social Services. Also, our HR director is going to go to the training or the certificate program at UWGB. And we could develop a train the trainer model within the county. That would obviously take some time to develop and be able to make use of. Also in the packet, and I'll just get through this, there is an email from Amy Conley from the Door County United Way that was sent to me on January 18th. The United Way is involved in a 21-week equity challenge. And Amy just wanted me to relay to the county board, and we also relate to the county staff that it's open to us. It would just be a voluntary thing if you're willing to participate in it. You just need to sign up. You can go to the website or the site that's indicated in Amy's email and sign up. That starts February 21st and runs through May. And then what was handed out today was some information that came forward from the Wisconsin Counties Association. on Friday, this past Friday afternoon, on a 4-week diversity, equity, and inclusivity webinar series that the WCA is offering free of charge. That information was put on your desk this morning, and that would run starting February 1st through the end of the month, and it's the four Mondays in February.
So as this came up from the admin committee, the discussion was along the lines of, we wanted to open this up for discussion at the board level and ask if you wanted to go to the finance committee to ask for the $4,200 roughly for Mohammed's presentations and the 8 hours that would take place in training for the county board would be one option. I was aware of the WCA. I didn't know they were going to pass that out, but they had sent out a thing a couple weeks ago about the diversity training issue, and I was going to authorize anybody who wanted to go ahead and do this webinar series. It's 1 hour each Monday for the 4 Mondays in February, and you'd be authorized to attend it at the training rate of the $25 per hour. And so the question became, does everybody try and do this first and then determine that we should look at going for the $4,200 and doing additional training? Or do we go for the $4,200 and do the training with Mohammed? That could not start till March, is that correct?
That's correct. The earliest he has available would be March, and looking at 4 sessions, it would likely run through July, I think.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let me we have some questions. Vinny?
Thank you. I guess I would like to support doing as much as we can, which would be all of these options. Of course, the WCA and the other one that you mentioned, the 21-day challenge, are optional. People can choose those, but I think the importance of us being together as a board and being able to discuss together is important. And I would really hope that we decide to do that with the 8-hour training.
Thank you. David Enigal?
Did we have a window of time when we're looking at possibly doing this? As you know, I'm not exactly in the county 5 days a week, and I need to rearrange my life. So are we doing it at like 2 hours before county board?
We have some ideas we can explain, Dave.
Okay.
So let me just take a step back. So again, we just got the information from WCA last week. So it just changed our thought process a little bit. And again, I think to go back to what Vinny says, I think that we can definitely add more training, but I guess what we're trying to do is make whatever we take advantage of, make it viable and on point. So this recommendation from our standpoint, and talking with Grant, we thought the best thing to do is maybe to go through the WCA training. The context, take a step back. We originally thought about adopting a resolution that came from legislative that talked about racism as a public health crisis. The speaker series we got when talking with the NWT individual is going to try to have context and education relating to that. So by the time we got completed with that training, is to see, are we comfortable with discussing that and passing that resolution on? I guess based off the content, what we see from WCA putting together, that might suffice, it might not. But it seems, from my standpoint, I don't know if it's worthwhile to say, let's do WCA and NWTC at the same time, because if you hear the same thing twice, you guys, it's not going to capture you and engage you. So from our standpoint, it seems to make more sense. Let's go through the WCA training, determine if we think that's sufficient for us to consider that resolution, and then we can say, well, that was good, but we need to do more. Then we could talk with NWTC and say, hey, these are the things we covered. We'd like to do more, but now we want to specialize your talks in these areas. So I guess that was what Grant and I had talked about. If we're going to take advantage of, the win-win idea concept, is let's get through to WCA. Let's see what they have, and because it's a free resource. Let's see if they cover enough of the material to where we feel comfortable, or we think we got to a certain point and we need more, then we can actually specialize the training with NWTC to take us to that next step. So that was just our thought process. And then if we would do that with NWTC, we'd probably work out, again, when we talk at the admin committee, it would not be part of county board because our meetings have been running long. But we probably would do it instead of, like, say, a Tuesday, we could say either every 4th Wednesday or every 4th Thursday. We'll try to target it that way. But it was discussed, making a county board or not, but just because of the duration of time and the attention span, we'll probably do it on a separate day. But we can hit that if we decide to actually move forward with the speaker series, so.
Susan?
Yeah, I understand that probably most supervisors, if not at least some, feel that this would be about as unpleasant as having root canal surgery. And I understand that it's uncomfortable. I am uncomfortable with us having this conversation too. But I think the fact that it's so uncomfortable is kind of like proof that we need to do it. I don't think anybody would question that we have a lot of problems in our country right now. And a lot of them have to do with the fact that we can't talk to each other about what those problems are. And as a young woman, I can remember the saying was, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And this is a countrywide problem, because if we're ever going to fix it, if we're ever going to come up with the policies and the laws at whatever level to fix anything, we can't do that if we can't talk about it and really understand where each other is coming from. And I think we are a very unique setting. If we talk about this in open session, or even if we have training sessions that aren't open, I'm not sure how all of that would work, but that brings that conversation to our community as well, and some of those resources to our community, so that maybe those conversations can happen in other places as well. I think this is a really important thing, and we can do our piece to moving this forward so that in 4 years, 10 years, 15 years, our kids aren't dealing with the same thing that we have never tried to solve or do our part to improve. Enough said.
Thank you, Susan. Kara?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make note that this from the WCA is in February, and then the in-person wouldn't be until March. But what I've noticed from the little excerpts like building a foundation and the county role in diversity, equity, and inclusion, it doesn't have anything to do with like the very basic understanding of the definition of racism and how people are understanding it now. And it's really, really simple. And I know that I heard on the floor today, and I wanted to say something because it's just so basic, that racism is a combination of power and the discrimination. It's not just the one thing. There's no such thing as reverse racism. And if we come from that basic understanding, like who are in the positions of power, who are in the rooms making the decisions, and every time you enter a room thinking, who are in these rooms, we're all white here, who are in these rooms making decisions for everyone else, then, so that's why I think that both things would be really great. I echo Vinny's sentiments about how I don't think just hearing things once, people don't understand it. I know my own journey with anti-racist work. It was definitely a process, and you get layers and layers, and you get better and better at not being like taking offense to anything. You kind of separate yourself from it, and you like when you hear something about white people, you don't think of it like, if it doesn't pertain to me, then it doesn't have to do with me, and I don't take offense to that. So I think those basics, I think that the Mr. Bay would probably be able to do those better than these WCA things. And that's I guess that's just where I was coming from. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David Engelbert?
Yeah, I guess I would agree with Ken and Grant's opinion that take advantage of the WCAA forum first, and then maybe the trainer if Kelly's taking classes, and the social services department is doing some work. We have some opportunity to learn from them, and we can always do something else later, reschedule something if the group supports that idea. But I think WCA is the place to start. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Vinny? I'm sorry. Vinny, hold on. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
Elizabeth, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also agree. with Ken. And I think that, looking at the WCA, I think that is, would be a good fit for us to cater this to what our particular role is as supervisors. So I think this would be a great starting point. I believe the 8 hours is excessive. I think it's expensive. 8 hours devoted to this particular topic would, in all fairness, open the doors to having trainings in many more equally important topics. So I think that's something to consider, that we don't just give one particularly important topic our full attention and money over other topics that would fairly be needed to be covered as well. So I just think that we should take a look at the WCA first before we invest in that, in the other training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Vinny, back to you.
Sorry for a second comment. I guess I don't have anything completely different to say than the first time I spoke, but I do feel that part of this training and part of the reason why it was being required to be in person or to be together is that there is a group dynamic that happens, I would assume, in a training that's in person versus us being with WCA and lots of other county, people where it's really impersonal and indirect. It doesn't mean it's not of value, but it's a very different experience. And Grant, I'm just wondering, if we do that route, what would the scheduling look like if we decide to go with the in-person training? Would that have to get put off to the next fall or the summer? Thank you.
Yeah, based on the speaker's schedule, they're running about three months behind. And that's pretty consistent with everybody I spoke with.
Just one clarification point. Just one point for clarification. Again, when we do the training or even the things, I guess, just like county board, we can't force anyone to attend a meeting. So just like Vinny, you're remote right now, individuals could attend remote, whether they do the WCA or even with other individual. We will set them up as WebEx series and they'll have the option to attend in any form that they have. So I just want to clarify that because that was discussed at admin and whether or not, we really don't have anything in our rules that says that anything is quote unquote required. You're all elected positions and you have the ability to decide what you attend or not attend.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Echoing a few good comments that were made. This is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen with a 1 hour thing or a quick one-off. The $4,000 is a totally worthy investment in county expenditure. And I think the part of that we need is the in-person part. I think it's great that WCA is doing this. I wonder if there's maybe a hybrid where can we still retain Mr. Bay to potentially, I guess maybe shadow these four, or at least understand, maybe see the outline of these four presentations that WCA is going to do, and then really wrap it up for us in person in 1 or 2 sessions. I mean, maybe that's a hybrid possibility, but I really think we need to get Mr. Bay here or somebody equivalent to do an in-person training. That being in community together is extremely important. I mean, it's more important in this subject than anything else, any other subject. So, and again, I think it was also alluded to that I'm not, I don't see the outlines exactly for what these 4 sessions are going to dive into. I sure hope they're going into history, because I think that's, for me, as I continue my journey on the path of being anti-racist. And again, it was brought up today, that's one thing, we can't just stop and say, well, I'm not racist. Well, it's not enough. Okay, we have to be anti-racist, we have to be allies. And that just doesn't happen by itself. This is a process, it's a revelation, it's peeling layers of the onion. And we do need someone in person with us to help us be in community with this subject, and hopefully maybe dive into some of that deeper history, redlining, the use of the Green Book, sundown towns. I didn't know what these things were a few months ago, and yet those are fundamentally important concepts to people who have Black and brown skin, and we need to understand that better, and that starts with the history. So I don't see the WCA, and maybe they will, I don't know, but I hope they dive into some of that history, because I think for me, a lot of it, you're just learning the facts of history really helped me understand, oh, that's why things are the way they are. And then it helps you understand the bigger picture all around. So I encourage us to do as much as we can, and again, maybe explore the opportunity to have Mr. Bay, maybe for 1 or 2 sessions that would maybe summarize or kind of, wrap things up from what we learned from these WCA sessions. Thank you for the consideration.
Thanks, Bob.
I guess Bob and Vinny, I'm not discouraging any training, so please don't take it that way. I guess I'm kind of going with what you actually just said right there. In my mind, I guess what we're trying to say is that we're not saying, no, don't do it, but we're at least saying, let's go through the WCA training and figure out what they're deficient in or what areas we need to go. I guess what we have right now is a potential contract with Mr. Bay to cover the topics as we have outlined. But like, for example, on Monday, February 8th, you have racism as a public health crisis. I guess I don't see us spending money on having to sit through that seminar and then have a 2-hour session with Mr. Him covering the same information again, where we could say, hey, let's do a hybrid and follow back up and let's cover these topics, whether it's the history or whatever. So I guess all I'm trying to say is, I think we can try to take advantage of both if we need it. I mean, it's up to this body to decide if we want to do those hybrid trainings in the future, but I guess what we put together was our initial thought. We didn't know about the WCA training. So we had a quote unquote, a proposal of covering these topics for this amount of time as a deliverable. And I guess right now, I don't want to double up on the deliverables if we're going to get something free through WCA. So I agree with what you're saying. I guess that's what we're trying to propose is let's go through WCA. Let's find out what stuff they don't cover or items that we do, and then we can customize if we want additional training with him on those topics and have that individual here.
I hear what you're saying. The thing we lose is potentially 3 or 4 or however many months. I mean, is it possible for us to get him, so to speak, on retainer or whatever, so that he would give us a session in March regardless? I mean, I would like to see, I think the continuity is important. For us to voluntarily and separately, again, I mean, sitting at home on your little screen, it's not the same. It's good. It's not the same. And then we get done with that and then we meet again and then it goes to another committee meeting and then we think about it some more. And then 6 or 8 months, then we're scheduling Mr. Bay. I mean, I guess that's better than nothing, but I guess I'm looking at, we've got, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of momentum here and a lot of brightness to a new day, so to speak. And I think I'd really like to take advantage of that for all of us and for our community. Sooner than later. Thank you.
Megan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of great comments shared. I agree with what Bob is saying right now. Ken, I respect what you're saying, though I would prefer for that to not be turned into to turn that if into a when. I think at the bare minimum, as many of us as possible should be attending this webinar series. This is a good start. It's a good base, but as Supervisor Kohout shared earlier, there's an uncomfortableness to these conversations that we might feel, and it's a good thing to live with courage over comfort. And these are hard topics. This in particular is one of the hardest. And yes, there are other issues facing our society today, but this is one of the largest. This is where we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to be able to really promote positive change. And I think as a body, it's important for us to start with a webinar, yes, but $4,200 is a slam dunk steal for group training of this magnitude and the reverberations that it could have throughout our community and the precedent that we would be setting for other communities and for our constituents as well, so they too can start to have these conversations and put courage over comfort. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Dan?
I guess I'd like to make a motion to go with the WCA at this time. And not part of my motion, but would encourage you to have it in this room with this video and the screens. It looks pretty nice.
It's every Monday morning.
I understand.
You're not going to get everybody here by any means. you can make it available, but nobody.
Well, I guess they can do it at home, but I mean, they could do it at their own time, but I'd encourage them to come here if they could.
We'll make the room available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. Discussion on the motion?
Well,
Wait, Biz.
we did this in the past where some of us came here and Ken set it all up, and then some did it virtual at home. So, you know, whatever works out best for you I'm fine with that.
Vinnie?
Can you, thank you. Can you please clarify for me how we can have a motion about going with the WCA training since that's already an option for us? I'm just trying to understand how like we would vote yes or no for this because it's already there and we already for free can do it. So I'm trying to understand the motion. Thank you.
Can you explain your motion, Dan?
Well, I guess, this is a start in the right area and let's see what this all offers us and see where it go from here. And like someone said before, maybe we go a different direction after we have these and they're available. So why not?
So your intent of your motion was to make the WCA offerings the first thing that we would do.
Correct.
And then at the end of that, take a look if you wanted to go further.
Correct.
And that's what you agreed to on your second, Biz. Okay. Hope that clarifies it. David Engelbert.
Yeah, I guess I agree with the motion. It seems I'm kind of hearing that WCA isn't going to offer us enough and they're not going to cover it the way we want. And I don't know that. I have hope that they're going to do a good job. And if we're going to attend 8 hours, I don't know much about Mr. Bay that's doing that presentation. Some guys are terrific and others don't do a good job with that either. So I'm ready to start with WCA and move from there after that. Thank you. Is that something we can do on the board or not?
Susan?
I don't have a problem with starting with WCA either, but I agree with Bob and some of the others who've spoken to, if there were a way to put the personal conversation piece in by perhaps booking Mr. Bay for the end of March or the beginning of April, once or twice, with the idea that we'd make available to him what those of us who did WCA had covered, and then work with him for what's next and what more we need, but not wait, discuss it again, and then have to book him in September because he's already full. I guess I support Bob's suggestion that we were to actually make it more concrete. Maybe we wouldn't need the 4, but perhaps 2. So that's my thought.
All right, thank you. David Enigal?
First question. Most of these webinars in general, wherever you find webinars, are maybe live, interactive, but they get recorded. Many of you know that I'm not exactly available at that window of time, and while I try and can get away occasionally, I would not be able to do that for the entire month. So do we know if, I know this is short term, do we know if this will be recorded and available for review later?
Yes, all the WCA trainings in the past have been recorded.
Okay, so we'll get some kind of access, so we'll look at it later.
They're online.
I just applied, like.
Okay. A second, the county needs to recognize that the county board is making an effort to recognize and work through something like this. To that end, and I understand we can't mandate it, but we certainly can make a county board meeting. And if board members can or cannot show up, that's variable no matter how you look at it. So I do in favor of the idea that this body of individuals try to do this consistently together as reasonably as possible. Clearly you can't mandate it. Clearly some of us, in my case, I'm not even going to be here on Mondays, that's going to be difficult. But it shows that the rest of the world that we're making an effort as a body rather than an individual choice. If we're going to be spending any time, I know that this is a cost. If we go the other route where it's going to be a cost to our individuals, can we consider at least sending an email out to the rest of the municipalities saying, hey, by the way, We are looking at contracting with this entity to provide the county board. We're going to open up the opportunity for you to consider paying your own way, but doing it. So I'd like the opportunity to look like we're trying to work with the other municipalities, because we're not the only entity out there that should be reviewing this. That being said, you're right. The comments about delaying it is a difficult item, but the reality also is this is not a new topic. It just has become relevant at this moment. Any effort by us, 21, to learn and understand the diversity out there in the world is important and valued. We may look all white in this building at this moment, but we aren't. There are a lot of us have a variety of other ethnic backgrounds as well. But I would ultimately like to try to see it as the board doing something together rather than the individual members doing something on their own. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Vinnie?
Thank you for listening to me so many times. This will be my last comment, but I think maybe, I know why we tabled this a couple of months ago, and I've kind of been working on this kind of resolution idea for 6 or more months. So putting a time frame on it, it's important that we do it in a considerate, compassionate way, and that requires some training, I understand. But I think we might be losing sight of a goal, because there really isn't an end goal or an end date. We're not just looking good to others by doing this training. We're doing this training to make the best policies we can as leaders that include diverse populations. So I think with that goal in mind, it's an ongoing process, an ongoing experience and training. And I think if our action items is having some actual things we want to put into action in our resolution, it's going to take work as a board to do that, where we discuss that and we meet about it and we talk about it beyond listening to the other information is great. It'll bring us hopefully to a common page, but it's not going to get the work done that is the end goal of a resolution. Thank you.
Biz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last session would be on Monday, February 22nd. And then on the 23rd is our next county board. Is it feasible then that we could make the decision on the 23rd? I'm going with Mr. Bay, yes or no? And you know, that's my thought, is that county
Well-
board is the day after that fourth session.
What we could do, I guess my thing is, again, on the 23rd, we could then say, okay, that was sufficient, that was not sufficient, let's engage with him. And we could get, and what we could do is you give authority to grant to say, okay, we want to pursue 2 more sessions. We give them authority to actually set up and schedule it versus having to come back in March. So in February, you could actually just give him authority to try and get it scheduled.
I'm constrained to point out that I talked with Robin Davis from the Brown County United Way, people from UWGB, people from St. Norbert's and Mr. Bay. Most of them want buy-in and want somewhere between 3 to 5 2-hour session commitment for this type of training. So I don't think 2 is an option. I can propose it. It will also, of course, adjust the price. And I should also point out, in terms of Supervisor Ennickel's idea, you get much bigger than 21 persons, and it's just not going to be a workable in-person group. So while it's okay in theory to open it up to other outside agencies, they do have different training programs that would be, and I discussed these with 3 or 4 other people I talked with, community type training that would go through perhaps the county board, but it's a very different type of training when you're dealing with a huge volume of people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have nobody else at the moment, so we'll go to the voter board. This is to approve or not approve doing at this point in time just the WCA piece. To 6 and 5 absence. So at the moment, it will be the WCA only. And then we have the opportunity at the end of the month, after the last seminar, to see if they want to go further. Okay. Any oral committee reports? Any committee minutes that anybody wants to review? Vouchers, claims, and bills? Alexis, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I had a question during the administrator's monthly report, and then, it's also on the library committee minutes, so I guess I'll bring it up again. I just would like a detailed update on the Yonkers building. I understand that the library is going through a MOU, for strategic planning and that kind of thing, so I just wanted, I think it's an important resource that the county board still has outstanding and a project that we're trying to move forward with a lot of other priorities, so I saw that there was some movement and I'd just like an update, I guess.
Sure. We're just waiting for the two foundations to concur with us all, in essence, working together to, I guess, define that vision. So I know there was discussion at the library board. I think we have progress with them in terms of quote unquote moving forward. I'm still waiting to hear back from the Miller Art Museum in terms of their foundation. I guess our goal will be that once we get that concurrence, we already have a potential contractor that we, that they have been working with in the past that we could, I guess, continue to work with in terms of trying to define that vision. We just adjust the scope of that work. But once we have that concurrence, my intention is to try to get a meeting of the library board, the museum committee, and then likewise those other bodies in the same room so we all can discuss kind of where we're going. But I just need to get that final clearance from, I guess, the Miller Art Foundation to make that happen.
And the ultimate vision is still incorporating some sort of archive function to the Yonkers building, is that still?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different concepts, but I think what we're all trying to do is define that vision within what we consider I call it the campus, but looking at all the facilities, and then trying to, define where that vision is going and get us all on the same page. So that way we're all working towards the same goal.
Thank you.
Announcements. Our next regular county board meeting is February 23rd at 10 a.m. Meeting per diem code is 126. Okay, I heard a motion. What is there a second? Got it. Okay, we have a motion, a second to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone.